Hey folks, welcome back. The days don't get too much more beautiful than today. We're into spring and thankfully the bugs are not out yet, and I'm talking about black flies and mosquitoes. If you guys live anywhere that has those, you know exactly what I mean. So I'm taking full advantage of it and I'm getting out and about today. Along with everyone else you can probably hear off way in the distance. But I'm outside today because I want to take some time and refer back to a Facebook post that I happened to read the other day. I follow a whole bunch of Facebook groups, and these groups tend to do with sawmilling and trees and forestry and all that sort of stuff. And I saw a post that talked about selecting trees for harvest in order to make into lumber. And it brought me to today where I'm talking to you about what I do in order to choose the trees that I'm going to harvest in order to make into lumber. So I'm out here in the Yamaha. I'm out in my Yamaha 82 Yamaha G2 golf cart, and I'm just touring around because I wanted to mention a few things about where I'm sitting right now. I'm sitting on the periphery of my red pine forest. Now, red pine typically are a planted tree, and the plantation, as you can see over my right shoulder here, starts just up the hill there. I couldn't tell you how many acres it is. There is quite a few there, definitely enough trees for me to harvest in my lifetime. But I'm right at the periphery right now between a mixed bush, sort of a mixed hardwood bush, and a plantation. So the trees up there were planted about 35 years ago, the red pine. The trees I'm standing around currently were not planted. These are naturally growing. And so I have to be very careful when I'm selecting trees to harvest that I look at my end goal. Now, many of you guys, your end goal is to make beautiful lumber, as is mine. But my end goal is also to maintain some of the qualities of the woodlot. The red pine plantation has very low species diversity. What that means is there's not going to be a heck of a lot of species present there. You're going to get some birds and woodpeckers and little ground critters, but you're not going to get a huge number as compared with, say, a mixed wood forest like you see behind you. This mixed wood forest, not only does it have a big diversity of plants, it also has a fairly big diversity of animals. I try to maintain that, and so when I have time to select what trees to harvest, I make sure to select trees from my red pine plantation. So one day this mixed wood forest will transition into that red pine forest and hopefully turn the planted area back into a natural area. So you guys know my end goal here, trying to get my red pine plantation one day, maybe not in my lifetime, but one day back into a mixed wood forest. I have to pay special attention to the trees on the very edge. Sometimes we call it the edge habitat. So the habitat, or the stretch of land in between different forest types. If you guys have a look behind me, geez, that's a loud car, eh? Everyone's loving the sun. Anyways, if you guys have a look behind me, you'll see the transition zone between the planted red pine trees and the more naturally grown mixed wood bush. I'm trying to maintain some of the trees that are coming in on the natural side of the forest so that I can hopefully get them to, with their seeds and all kinds of critter and wind and rain help, move their seeds into the mixed wood or red pine forest. Therefore, when I'm harvesting trees, I tend to start at the edge of the red pine forest, cut down some of those trees. What that does, it opens up the canopy to some of this beautiful sunlight. Also opens up the canopy for these other trees that are growing here, like the maple behind me, to drop its seeds with the help of that sunlight and some of the rain that'll get down to it. Oh, neat little bird right there, talking about diversity. Anyways, allows that maple seed to get down to the ground with some rainwater, some wind helping it, and some sun. It grows up and ultimately moves that forest from this side, mixed wood area, into the red pine area. Now, this doesn't happen overnight, and as that bird's telling you, it happens over a long period of time. So if you're hoping to see a whole bunch of results after you start your harvest, well, you're probably not going to see a heck of a lot, at least not in a day or two. But over a series of years, you will start to see that transition from one place to another, and that's what I'm going for. Now, if we head up here, and we'll very carefully walk up here into the transition zone. If we walk up here, you guys are going to notice here, I'm now standing in the shade. The reason I'm standing in the shade is because one of these big red pines here and that white pine behind me is sort of blocking the sun. Now that white pine, and the one I'm talking about is over my left shoulder there, That tree, I call it the twin sisters. They're sort of like replicas of each other. That tree there is probably well over 100 years old, so of course I'm not going to touch it, because that thing will provide a whole bunch of seed stock. That'll be called a seed tree. It'll provide a whole bunch of young trees all around the area. That's going to help to boost diversity. So I would leave that alone, even though it's providing lots of shade, but instead I would cut down the red pines, which are actually the other cause of the shade. Now, before I grab the chainsaw and come up here and just rip down all the trees in this edge row here, what I like to do is to pay special attention to where they're going to fall. I need to also pay special attention to what they're going to hit. If they're going to fall and land on my seed trees, which are all around them, well, that's not really going to do me much good. So I try to be very specific, very careful in how they're going to fall. Sometimes I'll use chains, sometimes I'll guide them with ropes, but I make sure they fall in a predetermined space so they're not going to do any damage. Now, when I typically cut them would not be this time of year, because we can have some big issues because there's all kinds of underlying trees and other plant species that are coming up. If I have a tree fall on that and then I'm working around it, limbing it, doing all the cutting and whatnot, I'm going to damage that underlying vegetation. So I tend to do all my cutting, all my felling of trees in the wintertime. The ground's nice and firm. I'm not necessarily going to be digging my chainsaw into the dirt, and it's also an easy time for me to get around on a snowmobile. Another reason I use the winter time, and many of you guys are probably already familiar with this, but the winter time has the ground frozen. When the ground's frozen, I'm going to reduce the amount of impact on the soil. Anyone out there who farms anything, you probably know what soil compaction is. Soil compaction is basically you running over the same spot with heavy equipment or heavy objects over and over and over again. The soil gets compacted. You're not going to get the water infiltration. A little bit of air will get blocked out. Definitely won't be very, very healthy. If you do that to the soil that you're trying to grow trees on, well, you're not going to do too well with that new tree stock coming through. So, harvesting in the wintertime, skidding in the wintertime, definitely the best time to do it. And you'll notice really good operators with logging companies and whatnot, they always tend to do the harvesting when the ground's frozen if possible, just to eliminate that soil compaction. And if we look down here, I don't know if you guys can see it, probably not very well, but every once in a while as I'm walking out here, I see some white dots on the ground. And what that is, it is droppings from birds sitting up in the tree. That brings me to my next point. I try not to harvest, especially in the springtime, because that's when a lot of mother animals are giving birth. So we have all kinds of young in nests up in trees and things like that, even some small mammals. When they're out nesting and you're basically in their habitat and you're cutting down trees, you're going to disturb them. Next thing you know, you're orphaning animals and you're taking away that whole idea of a diverse, healthy forest. Now, as we walk up here, and we make our way very carefully, because I've got some nice ferns coming up. They're kind of neat to see. But as I make my way up here now into the red pine plantation, you guys can see I've already spent some time in here cutting trees. You guys can see them laying on the ground. I got to pick them up and do all that sort of thing. Or maybe I'll let them lie there and provide some nutrients and habitat for little salamanders and critters down there. But anyways, you guys can see I've harvested some trees here. Now, many of the forums that I've read, people talk about, oh, I'm doing a great thing. I only cut down dead trees and leave all the good, healthy ones standing. Well, that's fine and dandy, but there's something for you to remember. Dead standing trees often provide habitat for a lot of nesting birds. They often also provide a food source. They're dead for a reason. There's probably little critters in there, little, insects and whatnot that killed the tree. And as a result, if you are cutting down those dead trees, you're probably taking away food source and habitat. Now, before you guys say must be nice to have so much periphery to be able to cut trees just on the edge of different types of forests, truth of the matter is I don't always cut on the edge of forest types. If you guys look behind you, and I just mentioned this a moment ago, I've been cutting in here, and I cut in here, probably a year ago. I left some of the ground cover, some of the leftovers rather, the slash in the ground. But the reason I cut in here in addition to the periphery is because sometimes there's nicer trees in here. And sometimes by cutting in the middle of a stand of trees, you actually improve the health of the stand. So in this stand of trees here, as you know, these were all planted approximately 35 years ago. But in this stand of trees here, they are all competing for the same basic things. They need some nutrients, they need some water, they also need some sun. If I come through here and I clear cut, well, that's great. I get a whole pile of lumber or a whole pile of timber to make into lumber. But then I left this big deserted area where I'm going to have new species called successional species move in, and it might not necessarily be exactly what I want. It's also going to annihilate the diversity in this area, and really going to take a long time for the species that are coming into the area to grow up to a point where we can have diversity again. So when you're cutting from an area like this, it's very important to consider the trees you're cutting. And so what I like to do is use a selective harvest method. I try to thin out the trees a little bit so they have more space between them. And ultimately the canopy gets more sunlight down to the ground as well. So it's sort of a 2-for-1. I get my trees out of here that I need to use to make into lumber, but I also leave the remaining trees with a better chance of growing bigger, stronger, and healthier. The remaining trees, as I mentioned, the ones that are on the ground still, if you leave some of them behind, that is okay. You don't need to have a park-like setting in your forest. This area here, with the slash left over, the tops of the trees, and even some of the lower sections of the trees, these provide critical nutrients that get back into the soil, and it also provides a really good break for little small critters and invertebrates to basically survive and hide under. So guys, before you fuel up that chainsaw, fire it up and head out into the bush to make yourself some lumber out of it. Make sure you understand what the implications of what you're doing are. If your end goal is to make a very diverse, naturally beautiful mixed wood forest, well, you got to plan for that. You're not going to necessarily see that develop, maybe not even in your lifetime, but someone will. And it ultimately comes down to what you do today as to whether you'll get to that end goal. For me, it's quite rewarding to have a whole source of trees to make my lumber with, but also having a very diverse wildlife habitat out here, including some of those monsters back there. See those massive white pines you can see? Those are even beautiful to see. So think about what you're doing, ask for some help, and definitely don't just go out and start cutting down trees if your end goal is more than just your piece of furniture or flooring you're going to make out of your lumber on your sawmill. Guys, the bugs are picking up here, so I'm going to get out of here. Appreciate all you watching. Come on back next time, and hopefully I'll be making my own lumber real soon. See you then.